I remember taking this class and they went into dancer pose. And I remember I've always loved that pose. I always think that pose is just so graceful and it's just such a pretty pose to see people express. And the first time I tried it after I had a stroke, I fell. And uh, like that was years ago, and I still tell the story and it still gets me choked up just because I remember at that time thinking like, oh my gosh, I did it wrong. And it felt like I'd gone back into those like binary ways of thinking like yoga is it has to be perfect or it has to be the Lululemon way. And I felt like I had failed.
Welcome back to Off the Mat. Today we have a special guest, Dr. Kevin Patterson, who is a remarkable psychologist, coach, and yoga teacher. We dig a little bit deeper than usual, so have your box of tissues handy. You don't want to miss it. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to Off the Mat. My name is Will, and today my lovely co-host is back. Take it away, Coco.
I'm back again. I'm here for 2 episodes in a row. Hopefully, we'll make it 3. Been through a kind of a destabilizing time of my life, but I'm happy to be here today. And I'm really happy to be here with not only Guru, but my friend Kevin. Kevin is a very inspiring person to me. He's a yogi, he's a psychologist, and he also lives in a jungly place. And we connected through Instagram organically, the way that I have connected with most of my friends that I have these days. And yeah, I'm really interested to see what arises in our conversation today. Hello, Kevin.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here today.
Likewise, we were happy to have you. Um, so let's see, where do we begin? This is also Galaxia. She wanted to say hi. She's feeling
Hi.
especially friendly today, also known as Miss Mugu.
Okay.
Kevin, do you have any pets?
I've got, yes, well, oh, funny story. Yes, I do have a good story about this. So I've got 3 rescue dogs. And so they're all little like Chihuahua poodle mixes, and you may hear them on the call. Like I do my best to keep them quiet, but sometimes they just can't be quiet. But recently, I am not a cat person. I'm super allergic to cats. And I adopted a kitten. So I've just been like taking the Zyrtec and powering through it. This is the cutest little kitten you've ever seen. But I came home one day and one of the neighborhood cats had kittens, and the mom didn't take to this one. And so I've been feeding this cat for the last several months, and now I'm like super in love and attached to it. And I just like wipe my eyes and sneeze and cough all day long, but it's worth it. I love
Oh,
this little cat.
yeah, I think I can tell that your eyelids are a little pink.
Oh, they are. They are. I'm so allergic to this cat that I can't stop feeding it and playing with it.
Wow, what an interesting curveball the universe has thrown you.
Oh,
That happens
totally.
sometimes.
Totally.
I'm gonna throw my 2 cents in there, and I don't know if it's too soon for sarcastic jokes, but like I used to tell my friends I'm allergic to pussy. And
Absolutely.
so you know what she did? She grinded on my face and I broke out in like pimples the next day.
Literally
Or like
allergic to
like a
pussy.
rash.
Yeah.
Like rash. So just I feel you when you're saying you're going through this stuff because oh my God, like pussy allergy is real.
It's
Yeah, that
real.
was like a
It's real.
traumatic experience.
I wonder if you can take Zyrtec for that.
Oh, that's amazing. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I love it.
So, other than being allergic to pussy, I think the three of us actually have a lot in common. Kevin, so do you want to tell us, like, do you want to kind of catch us up on your story of, from yoga into like, or from psychology into
hmm
yoga,
hmm
and then to where you're at now with doing a lot of work with queer men and women.
Yeah, absolutely. So just forewarning you, it's kind of a story that zigzags a little bit. So we're going to go on a journey. Um, so formally, so I've been a psychologist now for over about 16, 17 years. And I got my background in psychology. I have a master's in psychology and then a doctorate in educational psychology. And I started out in psychology teaching, actually. So I taught at the university level a bunch of psychology classes. And then I jumped into like organizational psychology first. So basically helping companies, large companies, create environments where people like to come to work. You know, like we've all had that job where you wake up in the morning and it's like, ah, I don't want to go to another work again. But you've also probably had that job before. You're like, I kind of like what I do. And, you know, if you have that good job, chances are you have a good leader, the company has a good product, or it's just a good environment that honors and respects everyone. So I worked for years in helping organizations become a place where people like to work. And then made that switch into more individual psychology and coaching with individual clients in the last several years. And so my journey into psychology to yoga was actually because of my health. And so I'm one of those weird people where maybe on the surface it might look like most things are fairly put together. But I was definitely not handed the genetic jackpot as far as health goes. And so when I was in my 30s, I was diagnosed with blood cancer, and I've had blood cancer ever since then. So we're going on like 1.5 decades here of being treated for blood cancer every year because it doesn't go away, and there's no cure for blood cancers. So part of my journey into yoga was that is trying to figure out how do I take care of my mind, body, and spirit because the chemotherapy and the radiation was just like zapping me, and my immune system was shot. I was worried all the time, and it just kind of sent me into a weird downward spiral. And then, as a side effect of one of my blood transfusions and of my chemotherapy, I actually, about 3 years ago, had a stroke. And so I had a stroke and it paralyzed my right side of my body for several weeks. I couldn't talk. I had to relearn how to do a bunch of things. It was just kind of a weird, messy process that my doctor at the time said, you need to do something for yourself that is physically um, stimulating like exercise, but because you had a stroke, we don't want you to go like lift weights. We don't want you to do a bunch of really heavy stuff, but you need to do something that will help you with your balance and help you with your strength and help you with your mental stamina. And that's when I rediscovered yoga. So I'd been a student of yoga for several years, but off and on, that after I had my stroke, yoga became the only activity that I could do that helped my balance and helped me relearn how to balance on one foot, how to walk again. It gave me a lot of confidence back. That's when I switched into being a student of yoga to a teacher of yoga. And so I went through my process of getting all of my certifications, and it just changed my life as far as being able to stay in my body. And I know that that's kind of a cliche phrase, but like after I had a stroke, I don't know, I always felt a little insecure. And like when I looked in the mirror, I could tell that there were still parts of the stroke that had lingered, and it was a long process to recover from it. That yoga was the number one thing that did it. And then the more grounded I felt in my body, the more I was showing up for my clients in more whole ways. And so I was actually noticing when my clients were feeling anxious and noticing whenever they weren't connected to their body and connected to themselves that I started doing yoga with my clients. And so I became this strange psychologist where in the middle of a session, it's like, we need to move our body a little bit because we're stuck in a story, we're stuck. And so let's just jump into a practice really quick. And I would take my clients into a yoga practice or a breathwork practice or a meditation practice. And I noticed that just how connected all of it is. And so I started kind of realizing as clinical as I had been and as Western as I had been, a lot of the Eastern modalities were actually helping me be a better psychologist than all the clinical stuff. And so I started noticing that I was having better connections with gay men, queer men, women too, because I think they share a lot in common of voices that sometimes our microphones get turned down, or we get kind of pushed out into the margins, or we're always having to justify our seat at the table, or we're having to fight for our ability to be heard. And sometimes we just play second fiddle to what the world wants from us. And so I learned that my heart is with queer men, helping them recover their story, helping them feel whole and complete in themselves. And yoga was kind of the tool that connected all of it together.
my first response to that powerful story was like, wow and whoa. Kevin, you're so young, and to go through a lot of those like experiences and to look this glamorous on camera today really trips me the fuck out.
Oh my
You know,
gosh.
somebody
No.
well, somebody who's been teaching yoga for 18 years, like I've gone through my experiences of surgeries and whatnot, but I'm in my 50s and I'm supposed to go through those kinds of experiences. And you just, hearing your story, it's just, it's that tale of like, you just never know,
Mhm.
and you gave me goosebumps and made me feel a little bit emotional how you found yoga to like find healing in that. And now you're using that in your practice. I just, somebody's also like an owner of a studio. It gives me hope to like tell people like this shit really works, man.
Yeah, and what's funny is like when sometimes people ask me, or you'll hear the question they ask yoga instructors, what's your favorite pose? What's your favorite asana? And to be honest, like that question always makes me emotional just because like I remember taking yoga for years as a student and being fairly good at it, and then taking a couple years off, and then I had my stroke, and then finding yoga again. I remember taking this class, and they went into dancer pose, and I remember I've always loved that pose. I always think that pose is just so graceful, and it's just such a pretty pose to see people express. And the first time I tried it after I had a stroke, I fell. And uh, like that was years ago, and I still tell the story, and it still gets me choked up just because I remember at that time thinking like, oh my gosh, I did it wrong. And it felt like I'd gone back into those like binary ways of thinking like yoga is it has to be perfect or it has to be the Lululemon way. And I felt like I had failed. And what's funny is I went home and I was like, wait, I was really being competitive with myself and not graceful. I wasn't practicing yoga. I was practicing judgment and competition. And that's not what this is about. That I decided to make that pose my benchmark pose. And so I said, well, don't let the fact that you fell out of coming through a medical, bad experience, don't let that be what deters you from teaching or practicing. And especially as a teacher, I was kind of like, what good of a teacher can I be if I can't hit most of the poses because my balance isn't good? That it actually was the opposite. It actually helped me be the best teacher ever because I could use therapeutic language to help people access poses because I myself couldn't access a lot of poses in the beginning. And so week after week, I used dancer pose as my kind of litmus test on am I getting stronger? Am I getting stronger mentally? Am I getting stronger spiritually? Am I getting stronger physically? Is my balance coming back? Is my strength coming back? And now that's one of those poses that when I hit it, it's like, yes, yes, yes. Like that is what yoga is about, is teaching myself to be a better version of myself. And so, um, I don't know. That's just kind of what came up when you
Wow.
said that.
Wow. Okay, so here's another connection. Dancer pose was my assigned peak pose in my 200-hour teacher training.
Okay.
So everything in my sequence was to lead up to that particular posture or that
Mhm.
particular shape. And I thought I'd make it super interesting by using a strap to kind of grab
Yeah.
hold of your foot behind you. And I still have a t-shirt to this day where it's a dancer's pose with a strap, and underneath it, it says, get your strap on.
I tell you what, I used my strap on for months in that dancer pose. I did.
Like,
And that's a funny metaphor too, because when I
yeah,
fell, the teacher came up behind me and was like, and she was one of my mentors, and she was like, use a strap. And in my head, I was feeling competitive and very in my ego, where I was like,
yeah,
I don't need a strap, I don't need a
right.
tool. And yet I realized that's what they're there for. They're there to help us like expand the pose. So you can actually go further sometimes with a strap. So trust me, I use my strap on all the time.
I lost you guys' sound for a minute because it started pouring rain, and now I come back and y'all are talking about strap-ons in dancers pose. Is that what
Yeah,
I?
you got
Awesome.
it.
We're like
Wow, I'm gonna have
15
to go back
minutes.
and listen to.
Oh my God. We're like 15 minutes in this conversation. Went from allergic to pussy to like having to go through, life crises to dancers pose and strap on. So, you know,
I'm telling you, there's nothing we can't talk about. So,
Well, this is why yoga teachers come off the mat and have these conversations. It all gets to be here, right?
right.
oh my God, that's amazing. Dr. Kevin, who would have thunk?
Right.
So,
What?
one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, yeah, I mean, first of all, such an impressive story, and like I always feel the same as Gabriel, just like, how have you done all these things, and how are you like doing it so well? It's amazing. But one of the other things I wanted to ask you is, and I don't think I've asked you this before, but I know that you dabble in teaching naked men's yoga,
Mhm.
and I don't know if that's like a new addition, like a new experiment, or is that something that you've been doing for a long time?
Honestly, that's a new thing. And what's interesting is years of working with queer men, I start to notice, and maybe this is just how my brain works, but I notice patterns in people. And so if I have a session with you, chances are I'll stop and say, okay, I've noticed a pattern. Like the last three or four things you said, here's what they all have in common, or here's what, here's the underlying foundation of what you're saying. So my brain sees patterns. And whenever I work with queer men, I'm not saying this is a universal experience for all of them, but a pattern I see in a lot of queer men is that queer men can't fully heal or recover themselves until they recover their confidence with nudity. And it's odd, but it's true. It's like a strange rite of passage that for most queer men as they grow up as boys, like we didn't all grow up in a place where it was, safe or acceptable for queer men to talk about sex or to talk about gay sex, or anything like that. And we didn't have a lot of role models modeling positive gay sex. And so it was all things that we had to do behind closed doors, explore in other ways that were secret. And so it's a part of our development as queer men because for most of us, we came out either as a teenager or as an early adult, some later in life, that we went through a developmental process where we were honestly raised as hetero men. We were raised in a hetero world, thinking very binary, men, women, good, bad, right, wrong, good, evil, that kind of thing. That queer men, the gift we have is we get to play in the non-binary space. We can be whatever we want to be. And that's the beautiful thing. But whenever we come to terms with that and come out and reclaim our sexuality, and our orientation, we have to go back and pick up those developmental pieces that we didn't get developed as kids. And so for us, we have to actually go back and learn how to have healthy relationships with each other. We have to learn how to have, sexual relationships with each other. And for most queer men, when they come out, they go right into the very transactional sexual world where it's about apps, it's about hookups, it's about performance, it's about, being enough, about are you good in bed, are you all these things that they don't make the spiritual connection to sex to make it something bigger. And so for me, like teaching Tantra and taking Tantra as a student as well, that was something that taught me to connect with my body in sexual ways that once I felt confident being a sexual person and that it wasn't bad or it wasn't evil or sinful. It was almost like I unlocked a level like a video game or, where you unlock a level where it's like, whoa, I just became more of myself and I just became more whole. And then we go into places where now it's like, now I want to celebrate my sexuality and I want to celebrate my openness with my body and I want to teach other men how to do it too. And so I find typically what holds most queer men back is they haven't fully embraced their sexuality. They're still hiding parts of themselves. So I know for me, once yoga, literally, and I tell people this all the time, yoga saved my life. Once yoga saved my life and it brought me back into a place where I saw my life with purpose and I saw that I could heal and recover my physical self, it brought me in alignment with my spirituality that I started taking a nude yoga class here in Hawaii. And for me, like everything just like was thrown open to where it was like men in a room together with the invitation to practice intimacy, but not the expectation to practice intimacy. It was a safe place to practice it, that as long as people were consensual and it was part of the process, explore it. But if it's not, we're also all there to do yoga and we're there to, hold each other in the highest regards. And that became a very safe place to be naked with other men, that it was kind of like, why have we denied ourselves this? Like the ability to be intimate with each other without the expectation. but with the curiosity and the openness that we can co-create our relationships together. And honestly, that's the beauty, in my opinion, of being a queer man.
Damn, I didn't know this is going to be like gay Oprah today. This is this is
You get to
so
you
good.
get to
Oh my God. I'm like taking notes. I'm like, dude, I need to like play this over and over. You said pick up the developmental pieces that we missed as kids. Holy shit, that's powerful, my friend. You know, it's when I met Roscoe, he has opened my eyes and opened up these doors of like the different types of things that we have missed out on as well. We're still missing out on as gay men. I'm 58, and so I am still learning like what the younger generation is coming up with. And for me, it was a matter of like coming out. Like that was it.
Mhm,
Like I'm
mhm.
gay, I'm proud, and I'm out at the workplace, and you can count me in so people know that I exist. I just want to be seen, you know, and that to me was enough. And every time I have conversations with you gentlemen, I'm like, there's a lot of work out there, and there's a lot of things that for me I never even had a chance to explore,
There
you
really
know.
is. And it's fascinating because like I'm in my early to mid 40s and like I've got two kids and my oldest daughter, like their generation, it's fascinating because it's almost like we can get bitter, that we had to go through so much and your generation had to go through so much, my generation had to go through so much that we can be bitter the fact that these kids will never know what it's like to live in the closet or live, oppressed. But that's not the right mentality to me. It's like, thank God they'll never have to learn that. Like apparently the
Oh, I'm
work we
so happy
did,
for them.
I know it's like the work we did apparently paved the way to where they don't have to live like that. That's great. And like whenever I meet my kids' friends, it's not even out of the question for my daughter to say, "Hey, my friend Matt is coming over and her pronouns are, you know, they, them." And I'm like, Matt, interesting. Okay. And in my mind, I'm still trying to place people in those binary boxes because most of my childhood was things have to make sense and my brain has to classify things. And then I meet this, young female presenting person and her name is Matilda and she goes by Matt and she's practicing they, them. And I'm like, fabulous. Like, live your best life, kid. And, it's just that kind of stuff where they don't think anything about it anymore. And I mean, yeah, kids bully and kids can be mean, but at the same time, like for us to be able to have that freedom, it wouldn't have happened.
Totally. You just reminded me of a story of like a recent experience. I used to work at a Waldorf school. I was the after school teacher for a few years. And so like we had amazing experiences on the playground. Like we had so much fun after school and um a lot of crazy experiences, a lot of like role play and like trippy imagination experiences, a lot of animal funerals for like bugs and things. Like
Mhm.
it was just an extremely bonding time. And then I disappeared and moved to Costa Rica. And then I went back to visit the school a couple of weeks ago. And I knew that a lot of the kids had moved on, and I didn't know how many of them I would actually get to see because I didn't tell anyone that I was coming. And all of a sudden, I was about to leave, and school kind of was ending, and I found myself faced with like 12 of them at the high school. And it was incredible. It was extremely nostalgic, extremely emotional. All these memories were bubbling up, and some of them were completely different. Like some of them were like a different gender going by different names. Some of them were hardly recognizable, but it was really amazing and sweet. I'm not around kids that much. I can only
Yeah,
imagine what it's like to be that age in today's world, but it was really uplifting. It was beautiful.
I bet. And you get to see the progress. And it's like, that's fun in my lifetime to see the progress.
Totally. You can tell that, maybe it's forever, maybe it's not there, but they're like experimenting with different identities and their friend,
Absolutely.
and it's like completely supported by, especially at the Waldorf school, like supported by the staff, the faculty, everyone, and their
Oh
peers.
yeah.
It's
Waldorf is
cool.
so tactile and experimental. Like I love that type of education. It's really great.
It is like art as education.
Hmm, hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, I feel you. And I agree. Like I struggle with bitterness about like various things, but also like the developmental experiences that that are were so delayed for me, but I don't feel jealous and I don't feel angry at the younger generation for not having so much struggles. I'm really glad for them. But yeah, like for me, getting into naked yoga was like I haven't maybe developed my language as much as you, and I'm not a psychologist, but intuitively, I started practicing nudity intentionally um, in college. I started modeling for art classes. I just wanted to be comfortable being naked. I just really wanted,
Yeah.
and like in the growing up in the deep conservative South, like I didn't know a lot of straight guys who were comfortable being naked around each other either. So it's not
Right.
like that was like that's a developmental experience that they missed out on as well. But there's something about the queer soul that just like really wants to be communally naked. It feels
Right.
so relieving and so comfortable to just be seen and just be like, ah, like awesome, like, or I don't know if that's more individual and personal to me. Just like I want to be seen, I want to be known, and I want to
Right.
be on that level of like intimacy with people. And so the next step after that was not gay saunas. That's a totally different thing, but just Korean saunas.
Yeah.
That was fun. That was cool. And then, yeah, like a natural progression as a yoga teacher, starting to focus on queer men was let's teach naked yoga. And it is absolutely so different than the mainstream gay,
Mhm.
crazy hookup, sexualized experience. A lot of gay guys are only comfortable being naked in those hyper-sexualized situations, and then they want to put their clothes
Right.
back on. So like actually being vulnerable and intimate and getting in poses that might not be the most flattering for you and not being raging hard and sexualized is a completely
Right.
different thing. So like it feels so good though to get over those neuroses and fears
Oh
and
my
just be
God.
able to do it.
You just summed up my first nude yoga class that I taught. Um, like literally, and again, I'm a firm believer that, I used to do a bunch of public speaking, and the number one rule to public speaking is nobody knows when you mess up. Like, just keep going. And oftentimes you're way more critical on yourself, but if you just keep going, nobody will know. So I was trying to apply that same philosophy to teaching nude yoga, and I went into it very apprehensive because it was my first time teaching it, that I was fearful because I had answered a bunch of men's questions and fears about, is this going to be hypersexualized? Is this going to be, uncomfortable? Is it going to be something where I have the ability to say no? And so I recognized that a lot of their fears were around getting out of the mainstream gay experience of quick hookups and just get it over with, that they were wanting this to be a valuable experience, and they were worried that gay men can't be trusted to be in a room without our clothes on without it getting super performance driven. And so when I walked in the room, my biggest fear was, honestly, don't be weird, don't be weird, don't be weird. It was like, make it comfortable, make it comfortable. And the same thing is like, we honestly only did yoga for about 25 minutes, and I felt kind of bad about it, but my gut, and I'm a huge follow my gut person, and my gut told me that I could see the look of discomfort on everyone's faces. And so what I did was 25 minutes of a very short practice. And then I just said, let's just have a seat. And we just sat in a circle and talked about, what was that experience like for you? How is it being, nude in a room full of 20 men, and it being something where there was no expectations of you? And if you think about yoga as a spiritual practice and a discipline and a belief system, how did you practice yoga in here? Or did you practice comparison? Did you practice competition? Did you practice self-sabotage? Did you practice all these other things? And I can use like therapeutic language to say, let's each time work more on staying on our mat, staying in our practice, and realizing I think we're all here for the same reason. And we had a couple people that didn't come back, but for the most part, every week we had an addition of somebody that just said, I heard this was a really great space to just practice being nude together and being, comfortable with our bodies. And then I started noticing there were lots of different body types and lots of different, sizes. And I think that was the conversation the first time, was like, I typically don't like people to see me when I'm not erect because, when it's flaccid,
It's
it's
not
not
as
that
impressive.
impressive. Yeah, and it's like, but then we had the experience of, there's 25 in us in here right now where we're all basically not impressive right now, but is that what we're here for? Or are we here to be impressive? And if so, then that's a different type of party. And like, again, that's on the table too. But like for this practice, like the goal is to stay in our practice and stay on our mat and stay in it. And man, the more I taught it, the more the men would tell me, they're like, I thought I was coming here for the yoga and the asana and the experience of it, but they're like, I didn't realize I was coming here to be comfortable being nude in front of other men when I have hookups all the time. And I'm like, there's a difference in having hookups versus being intimate with somebody and actually letting yourself be seen.
Yeah,
I re I re
absolutely.
I remember a story where I was asking Coco's I think I was asking about what, like the a typical naked yoga class, and I asked you a question, Coco. It's like, so do people like get hard, get boners? Like, tell me what happens. And you said, quote unquote, yeah, it happens, and usually I'm the first one. And I started laughing. I started laughing. It's like, great. It's when your teacher gets a boner. It's like, here we go. But my
Yeah,
comment to that is like, people need to embrace the fact that they can still get hard based on
yeah,
whatever is going on, because as you get older, it doesn't quite function that
right.
way. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know if you recall what it was like to be a teenager and go into school and have to adjust and be super
Oh yeah.
uncomfortable because you couldn't control it. And I remember going into gyms when I was a little bit older, in my 20s, 30s, and people would shower, and all it takes is one guy to get erect. And before you know it, a bunch of guys are getting erect with them. You know what I mean? Like I would think that in a space where there's nudity, like it all
Yeah,
gets to be welcome. It's like embrace your erections,
right.
embrace your whatever it was that you came here with. It's like that's the part of being a man. You cannot help your nipples getting hard when it's cold. Like there's no
Yeah.
need for you to like restrain. Like this is a space for you to like fully experience your manhood.
And the point we were talking about is you just have to normalize what the body does. And like I have a code of conduct that people sign for the new yoga class, and the very first one says boners happen. And they just do. And if they do, two things, either work with it and just keep moving or have a seat. Like take a break if you need to take a break. But like to feel shame and guilt around it, for me, I'm like, that's not what this class is about. The class is about, embracing your body in all forms, knowing that we're all primal animals and it's going to have a reaction at times. And like Coco, I mean, there are times when it's like, shit, I'm the one causing the boner problem here. Like I and it happens.
Yeah.
Causing the boner problem.
Yeah.
I'm so sure. I just say that it's how penises smile at each other, like they like to see each other, especially in queer spaces. And they're
Yeah.
kind of like, I also refer to them as our pet dragons because they're like these things that we don't have full control over.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, like to me, it's actually like, so I celebrate it, I want people to feel good about it. It can
Mhm.
actually be hard for me as a teacher, no pun intended, to, like, it's just like being a teacher in a classroom full of students. Like I'm a funny and gregarious type. I like to allow funny and fun and exciting things to arise, but it can get out of control quickly. So I would say that that's like one of my difficulties as a teacher is like I really allow and create space for
Yeah.
fun and like misbehavior. And
Mhm.
I feel like sometimes I shift towards one end of the spectrum too much or the other like I'll let someone know that they had like a trigger or someone will let me know that they had a triggering or like uncomfortable experience and then all of a sudden I get like too serious again
Sure.
and so that to me is but I think that's just the nature of it, especially for some people more than others. I think life often involves shifting from one extreme to another.
Right.
uh,
Well, and I think too, going back to like more traditional practices of yoga for a second, I think like yoga teachers take such pride in their class. Because there's a lot that goes into planning a class, planning the theme, planning the peak posture, planning how we're going to get there, planning for modifications, the perfect playlist. Do I want to have candles in the room? How do I want to do the lighting? Like we go to a lot to create an experience of a class that we want students to walk out of. And when they walk out of the class and say, "Oh, I didn't love your playlist this time," it's like, "Oh, bam, right in the heart." that it's, you know what I mean? Or like,
Yeah.
that peak posture, I hated the transition to it. You're like, oh, I planned that all week long and I practiced that and it was the perfect
Non-reactive
transition.
behavior,
What are you talking
non-reactive
about?
behavior.
Yeah. And it's that kind of stuff that back to like the nude yoga. I mean, whenever, you want to create a place that's playful and fun and sensual, but you also want to create safety and growth, and you want to have both there. That's a hard continuum to create, and it takes a lot of finessing that, you sometimes err on one side or the other, and you leave, and everyone's like, wow, that class was way too sexual. Or you leave, and it's like, wow, that class was way too cerebral, and it wasn't fun, it wasn't
Yeah.
playful. Like, it really was very, like, why did we even need to be naked for that? It was a basic yoga class.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so it is hard to play in that space and create that perfect experience.
It is. And on that same token, one of the other things, I don't want to make this all about me and my experience, but one of the other things just in men's spaces that I find difficult and but it's more related to body positivity rather than like
Hmm.
sexuality, is that,
Hmm.
you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't when it comes to boners. But then in the body positivity space, you have guys who have really fit, classically beautiful bodies. You don't know how they feel inside, though. You don't know if
Hmm.
it's actually taking a lot for them to push themselves to
Hmm.
show up.
Hmm.
And then they do show up, and it's triggering to everyone because some people love it and express a lot of that. And then other people are like triggered about it in a more negative way. They're like jealous. So like those guys have a
Right.
complex to show up as well. Then other guys at the other end of the extreme feel terrified to show up because they don't get enough love or enough attention. And then it's
Right.
guys fall somewhere in the middle who tend to be more comfortable showing up and being seen. But I'm always trying in my spaces to like help everybody to understand that like you don't know how someone feels about themselves just because of how they look. So please be like a little bit like just be aware of that as you
Right.
express your thoughts and feelings
Right.
and give everyone love and attention because this is not we're not looking for hookups here. This is not grinder. This is a space of brotherhood and trying to all help each other feel good and comfortable.
Right.
um, so I find that to be continuously difficult to guide and manage.
I hear you 100%.
Like, and
Do
I
you?
and like guys who, there's like it's hard to find language about it too. But we had a guest who even came on, like he's done a lot of work around like embracing and accepting his small penis. He'll even say it, and it's like amazing. Like we need more leaders like you. Like you're hot, dude. Like you're awesome. You're
Yeah,
cool. We love you so much. Like show up and like people of
absolutely.
all they need. Everybody needs leadership and representation, and then you see a guy with a small penis looking hot and confident. It's like, oh my God, that's hot. Like I can show up like that now. Or, whatever. You see someone who's older doing that and it's like empowering. It's like it's amazing. I
Absolutely.
want everybody to feel good and show up like that.
Absolutely.
You all remember what it's like? Maybe y'all are too young for this, but back in the day, here I go bringing up my high school traumas. I remember like being in the locker room, and
Hmm.
it was a given that you would take off all your clothes to get into your swim trunks, and after you go swimming, you shower.
Hmm.
Like even as a kid, I remember like I'm like 13 in this story. Like this is the first time I'm going nude in public with a bunch
Hmm.
of strangers. Like how like how uncomfortable was it for this kid to have to go through that, for instance, right? And as an adult, well, you don't have those practices. It could be something that could be super liberating, and it gives you
Right.
an opportunity to kind of experience something now that you're a little bit more in charge, you know. And I don't know. I'm not really sure I'm going with this. I'm going to tie it into a class that I've taken in WeHo. I'm not. I'll keep the teacher nameless, but it was at Naked Warrior Yoga, and I was there to support the teacher. Coco knows who I might be talking about. So I'm practicing new yoga for the first time in this public setting. Like, oh, this is cool. Like I have my own safe space. I'm fine. Until the teacher said, "Let's go around the room and bounce." I'm like, what? I have to go
Okay.
around the room and bounce. But the funny part is like I'm in my head, I'm like, oh no, I'm away from my safe space. And now I'm bouncing around like, oh, this is actually helping my penis.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, and then you get out of your head because it's like, wait, everybody's doing that same thing. I feel like I'm blending in now because it's almost like that person not participating versus participating and see where it goes. You know,
Absolutely.
yeah. So I just want to add to this conversation in terms of like when you start inviting people to participate, one thing that really helps is like come in with an open mind. I mean, you're already going to be nude,
Right.
you're already going to be vulnerable. All we need for you to do is just crack the window a little open and let some of that fresh new air in.
Right. Well, what's interesting in some of my personal sessions with people, one-on-one sessions, the topic of sexuality comes up and their feeling of their own sensuality and their own owning their sexuality. And it's typically from a person who grew up with a lot of like religious oppression, we'll call it, that we actually have to practice. And honestly, if their request is to let's do some work nude together to do it, yeah, we'll do that. And I've had several sessions with clients where it's like, I need to practice this nudity. Like, can we do that? And one of the things that I had to practice with this one man that like literally it like ooh, it blew off what I thought I knew about gay men because I realized this is also a trend is the rush to take our clothes off, the rush to turn the lights off, the rush for it to be over, and the rush to kick the person out. And it's like we are literally like trying to speed train this whole thing. And if it truly is going to be something that we feel with our senses and we like embrace and we actually own, because his word was, I want to own my sexuality. You can't own your sexuality by wishing it to go as quickly as possible. Like stay in the moment. And so he and I, for one session, it seemed so silly, and he was laughing and I was laughing, and then it became comfortable that we were practicing the art of seductive undressing. And I was even like, because most men literally turn their backs to each other, take their clothes off, and then it's like a quick turnaround and a quick unveiling and a scan of what we're working with, and then it's a jump in the bed. That for him, it was like, what if you made the art of taking your clothes off part of the ritual? Like, what if you made it part of the play, part of the fun? And what if you'd use it as a way to honor yourself and allow yourself to like call in the behaviors of being seen, being witnessed by another person. And so the first time I was like, give me your most seductive undressing. I'm just going to tell you it was not seductive at all. That I had to stop and say, no, 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 no. That was not it. Like, I know you can do better than that. And so, like, literally, we
That's
practiced like
amazing.
walking the runway, taking it off, and like swinging it. Like, we were having fun with it. And then by the end of it, though, like, what I was wanting him to see is there's no right way to do this, no right or wrong way to do this. But I said, how do you feel now after doing that? And he's like, I feel lighthearted. I feel lighter. I feel like less heavy. I feel less like he said it's always this moment where the energy just feels stuck in my body and it doesn't feel stuck anymore. It feels fluid.
That's great. So I'm going to change direction here real quick. So
Mhm.
we talked about some of the things that you offer. Could you walk us through, or at least like let the gentleman know, like what types of services, how you conduct your services? Is it one-on-one? Do you set an appointment? Tell us
Sure.
what your work schedule services look like.
Absolutely. So I typically do one-on-one sessions with people. I also sometimes do couple sessions. I find with gay men, work sometimes needs to be done together. And if you can get each other on the same page, and it's like marriage counseling, but for gays, because oftentimes we didn't get and we have to unlearn behaviors together that we were raised with. And so I'll do one-on-one, I can do group session, and I typically do packages of 10 just because I find it takes about 2 or 3 sessions to truly get all the cards on the table and to see like what are we unpacking here? What are we working with? What are the goals? What are you wanting to solve? And then it takes, I would say, several sessions to move forward, create some new habits, and then like one or two sessions at the end to evaluate how has life changed from when we started to now, and do we want to keep going, or did we hit your goal? My personal belief is if you hire me as your psychologist and 3 years later we're still working together, I'm not doing my job. You shouldn't need me forever. But for like two or three packages, like sometimes I feel like we just need a kickstart again. And so I typically do like a series of 10, 75-minute sessions with people because sometimes it takes a little bit to get into it and a little bit to wind it up, that I want to have at least a good hour with people. And what I find I work with the most are honestly big life transitions. That's my big topic is, queer men. Sometimes we don't get brought along for some of our big life transitions because our developmental stages are a little delayed. And so we'll talk about things like getting a new job, things like getting married, getting divorced. Do you want to explore having kids? The death of a partner, that's a big one that we don't talk about, end of life stuff with queer men, that can be very isolating and lonely. Even aging, we're not kind to our elders. In many regards. I lived in Phoenix for a lot of my life, and the gay scene there is very different, but it's not very inclusive of older gays, and we don't pay a lot of respect to the path that they've paved for us. And so, for me, aging is a big one that gay men experience aging very different than straight men or even women. Um, and so, those are some of the big life transitions. I also work a lot with burnout because a lot of men, a lot of gay men specifically, they have just been trying so hard to make their life work in a world that's not made for them, that most gay men don't know when they're just spiraling, and they don't know that they've been spinning, and all their discretionary energy has just been used trying to fit in and feel safe. And so a lot of gay men experience burnout, and they don't realize that they're experiencing it from a lifetime of having to come out daily. A lot of people think coming out's a one-time experience, and we continue to come out daily. And that's stressful. And so, there's a lot of expectations on gay men to either fail and be the stereotypes that everyone doesn't like, or there's a lot of pressure for men to break the stereotypes and be this super gay that like speaks for all of us. And so there's weird pressures that gay men put on each other. That burnout is very real, but it looks very different than burnout in the heteronormative world. So I deal with a lot of burnout. And then sexuality work. I deal primarily in helping people reclaim their sexuality and reclaim those developmental stages that I call it a reclamation process, because most men, they were raised to be little straight boys until they come out, and then they just keep going and they forget to go back and pick up their inner child and say, how do you honor the little gay inner child that didn't get it, that didn't even get a life? Like, we have to give that inner child a life because he was kept in a closet for so long. And so it's reclamation work, bringing gay men into the present. So I love the work I do. And that's pretty much how my business runs. Is I do primarily one-on-one sessions, typically once a year. I'll run kind of a gay men's cohort because sometimes group coaching is nice, especially if people haven't worked with a therapist before. They might be a little nervous to, or not quite ready to dive in. And so in a social setting, they can see how other people engage, and it gives them permission to engage differently. About once a year, I'll run a group cohort, and I always find that that's really rewarding because they get to kind of create the community themselves. And then every now and then I'll offer like a meditation course or my nude yoga course.
Got it. Do you have anything upcoming this year, or is the next one going to be in 2025 as far as the
Next one will
group?
be, yeah, next one will be in 2025 for the group. I'm looking at doing something in the spring. Last year, some of it's trial by error, and I tried something last year and it didn't work the way I thought it would. And sometimes you just learn as a entrepreneur and as a provider. Sometimes you have to try something and learn that didn't work. And
Yeah.
I thought for some reason that a lot of queer men would experience loneliness through the holidays because not all of them have a family to go home to. And holidays can be very isolating for some queer men. That I thought, you know what, I'm going to run a queer men's healing circle or group session during the holidays for the men who feel lonely and isolated. And I had one person sign up. So apparently
Yeah.
they're not as lonely as I thought they were, which is a good
Yeah.
thing because that's what I anticipated. So I don't plan on doing anything at the end of the year because my other ones, I typically like to keep it at like 15 guys. I think that's a nice group to where everyone can talk and be a part of the community without it feeling like I'm a number. So I'll probably do
Mhm.
something in the spring.
Yeah. Can I give you pro tip? I give you a
Absolutely.
suggestion. So I don't know if it still happens, but like the white party in Palm Springs is huge, like Easter, right? So Easter is a very delicate time for the gay people where they don't get to celebrate or invited
Uh,
or want to participate in such a religious tradition. But when you go to the gay to the white party, it's like pretty much drug fueled, sex fueled, like and it might be refreshing to say, hey, if you're not into the white party scene, come join me in Hawaii. You know what I mean? Like just because there's a
Perfect.
huge, yeah, just FYI, that might be something that you might want to think about in terms of like, there's always this. You don't have to be that. You could also be this as well. So FYI,
Perfect.
that's like every year it happens. And I'm even happy to help market that with you if you want.
I love that because when I tried it at like the holiday, like Thanksgiving, Christmas time, and that time frame, I wrote the post talking about like statistics about queer men being alone, thinking I would really get them, and I put it out there, and I love it because my mom is my biggest cheerleader and like support, and she read it and texted me. She was like, "Honey, that was a very depressing post," and she was like, she was like, "That's not the voice you." Yeah, she's like, that's not the voice you typically talk in. And she was like, there was nothing very hopeful about that. That she said, I don't know if you're going to have a lot of people. And I'm like, God, moms know best. And so I had to really kind of revamp that and think that might not be my right approach. So again, you learn. And so I
Yeah.
love that approach that you recommended.
Yeah, I just want to put that out there. It's like, man, the gays are either gonna party for 4 days or nothing. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
like, where's
yeah,
where's the other stuff? So, and that's why I love you boys. You guys are coming up from, you're the next generation of gays who are like being like wholesome. Like it all gets to be, experimented and revisited.
yeah.
And I so appreciate that. How do we get a hold of you? Are you Instagram? Do you have a website?
So what's funny is my Instagram became my primary growth tool. So again, things that
Okay,
you don't know whenever you set it out, that honestly the best place to find me is on Instagram.
okay.
And my handle is Kevin P0816. And that's honestly the best way to find me. You'll find a booking link for a session and you can schedule like a 30-minute, just a free welcome call, and we'll figure out are we a good fit for each other and we can talk through what you want to work on. And then, yeah, and I always post my events on my Instagram. So that's probably the best way to interact with me.
Beautiful, beautiful. One bonus question. I know that we
Yeah.
have a friend in common. How do you know
Mhm.
Jonathan?
Oh, I love Jonathan. So I credit Jonathan truly with the work I'm doing today. Um, so what's funny is when I was recovering from my stroke, I was pretty fresh out of my stroke and reconnecting with being a yoga instructor and doing a bunch of like healing work on myself that he posted for a retreat that he was hosting on the island of Kauai here in Hawaii, so our farthest out little island. And I hadn't yet made the full transition to move here. My whole family had lived here, but I was still in Arizona. And so I decided to come hang out with my family in Honolulu for a week and then go to his retreat in Kauai. And I met myself in that week in such a different way that I hadn't, that I literally went right back and I quit my corporate job as an org psychologist. I quit my corporate job instantly. I went strict into working with the queer community, took my business in a completely different way, and I've never looked back. And that was a catalyst that launched me into a very different trajectory. So I've told Jonathan this before. He is kind of the like spark that I needed to say, yeah, you're doing great work, but you could be doing a lot better work. And since then, he's been a dear friend. And in fact, the retreat that I'm looking at doing in the spring here in Hawaii is the same property that he facilitated our retreat on. And so he's been helping me, plan it and work through it. So just he's become a dear friend, like a brother.
That's awesome. I just
Yeah,
recall seeing you in one of his pictures in one of the retreats. I'm like, I love that y'all are connected, and I get to like
yeah.
witness all of this stuff that y'all are going through. It's amazing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. He's a good one.
Fantastic. And I know that another connection is he's deeply into the human design, which is what Roscoe's also offering out in the universe. So we're all
Yep.
connected, boys, and I love that. I really,
I
really
love
love
it.
that. Keep doing the work, my friends.
Awesome.
So I'm gonna wrap up. Roscoe, is there anything, Coco, is there anything else that you'd like to put out there?
No, I don't think so. Not without opening up like a whole other world of conversation. So we'll have to have you back, Kevin, because I have more questions for sure. And I just want to again say that you're a truly inspiring figure for many people. And I think it's amazing how you are powerfully combining a lot of powerful tools. Like, and the fact that you're an actual psychologist who's doing all of this, like, it's not it's not risky, it's not wrong. It's just like I think a lot of psychologists would be scared to step into such intimate and vulnerable territory, and that's one of the things that
Mm-hmm.
I find to be like so admirable and inspiring and awesome about what you're doing. So, and like a lot of
Awesome.
us doing, yoga stuff and human design stuff are not psychologists. So the fact that you are all those things is just really amazing. So
Thank you. Thank you.
go
And I
you.
have a feeling if we wanted to, we could have made this last like 3 hours long. So
Absolutely.
I think
Well,
we need a part two.
We will
I'm
have a
gonna
part
put
two.
on, yes, I'm just gonna put that in the universe that this is part one of many. Like I would
Okay.
love to have you like carry this on and see what you're up to and get people to get a little more involved. I think you're doing great work,
Done.
sir.
Done. I love it. I'm here for it.
Thank you. Well, thank you for being here, Roscoe. Coco, thank you for being here. And
Yes, my
Kevin,
pleasure. Thank you both for inviting me back.
and
Awesome.
Kevin, it's a pleasure to finally spend share space and time with you, sir. And I'm sure this
Same.
is going to it's not going to be the last.
Awesome. I hope not. And thank you
All
so
right.
much for the invite. I loved it.
Thank you so much. Have a great day,
Okay.
boys.
You got it.
Aloha.
Bye. Aloha. Mwah.
All right, dude, that's all for this episode. Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy it, please remember to subscribe. And if you want to plug into the Men of Yoga community even more deeply, you can follow us on Instagram and or Facebook. Links are in the description. And also leave us some comments. Let us know what you liked about the episode, as well as what other juicy topics you'd like for us to open up and explore, because it all gets to be here. All right. So go have a great day on and off the mat, and hopefully we'll see you next time.